Hello everyone and welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. If you're new here, my name is Chelsea. I'm happy to have you here with me today where we are going to do some canning. We're going to make some raspberry jam with some freshly picked raspberries from yesterday. It is a fabulous raspberry year. Raspberries love a lot of water and we have been getting a ton of rain. So both our raspberries in our garden and the wild raspberries up on the mountain are looking absolutely fantastic, which means I'm going to be putting up a lot of raspberries, both frozen and in the form of raspberry jam, over the next couple of weeks. We also have some sour cherries that we're going to be turning into a cherry pie filling. We live in the north and we can't grow sweet cherries up here, but we grow excellent sour cherries, so that's what we're going to do with those. I also have this big box of apples here. Normally I would be doing any type of canning with apples in the fall, but there was a really good deal on apples when I went and bought, what did I buy? Oh, all the apricots that we canned together. When was that? I don't know, 4 weeks ago or so. They had this box of apples and I think it was somewhere around $1.30 or $1.40 a pound, which is really a good price for apples. So I decided to buy some and they just have not been being eaten. They're pretty good apples, but they are ambrosia, I think was what they are. Yeah, they're ambrosia apples, but we just didn't eat a bunch of them. So they're starting to turn now. Starting to get a little bit of rot on them. So I am going to cut all of those bad pieces off. These are last year's apples, and I know that because they are a product of Canada. They're not imported from anywhere, and our apples don't come ripe or they don't mature here until the fall. So these are last year's apples, which means that the flavor is not going to be as good as they would be in the fall. But that is why making a pie filling with them or some applesauce with a little bit of added sweetening is the perfect thing to use them for, because that added sweetening is going to take care of whatever blandness is happening because they're an older apple. So we are going to do that. The very first thing that we're going to do though is go put on some shoes, because I normally don't wear shoes in my kitchen, in my house at all, but I definitely wear a good quality pair of shoes when I'm going to be doing a big canning day, because it means that I'm going to be on my feet for a lot of the day, and my feet would be absolutely killing me by the end of the day if I did not have a good pair of shoes on. If you are new to canning, or maybe you've been canning for a little while but you still have some questions about it, I do have a guide. It's absolutely free that you can grab clicking the link down in the show notes below, and I think it's 48 or 50 pages or something like that of a lot of information about canning, both water bath canning, steam canning, and pressure canning, and I've included a couple of recipes in there as well. So like I said, if you want to grab that, it's in the link below. I also thought it would be fun to encourage even more of you to get into canning, to offer a little bit of a giveaway in today's video. I'm going to offer 3 beginning canner prizes, and that is going to include a water bath canner, all of the materials that you need to get started with canning, so some lids, some rings, and some jars, along with some tongs so that you can get those jars out of your canner. All you have to do to get entered into this giveaway is either be a part of my email list. So if you're already on my email list, you are already automatically entered into this giveaway. But if you're not, I'll click, I won't click the link. You'll click the link. I'll put the link below this video in the pinned comment and in the show notes. So on the note of all things fun and canning, let's do some actual canning. The jam that we're going to make today is actually a pectin-free jam, which is honestly my preferred way to make jam. So we have 4 cups of raspberries here, and these are freshly washed raspberries. Now, a lot of recipes that you look up online will tell you to crush your berries. I actually don't do that because I like to have a little bit of texture in my jam and some whole berries or larger pieces of berries. We have our 4 cups of berries, so we're going to add 4 cups of sugar to this, a tablespoon or 2 of lemon juice, and then we're just going to let this cook on the stove until it usually only takes about 10 or 15 minutes or so, until it's at the jam state. The best way to check if your jam is set is to put a small plate in your freezer. And once your jam has cooked for the allotted amount of time, just take a little spoon of that jam and put it on your plate. Once it's cooled, which should happen pretty much right away because your plate is frozen, you can run your finger through it. And if the track of your finger shows up in the jam, is this making sense? Stays there and the jam doesn't kind of go and fill in the mark that you put in with your finger, then your jam is good to go. I have been making jam for long enough that I don't actually do that anymore, but I did do that when I was first starting. So we're going to add couple tablespoons of lemon juice, and then this is just going to go over onto the stove. We are going to do basically the same thing with our cherries, but we're not making a jam with these cherries. We're actually going to make the base for a pie filling. Normally when you're making pie filling and you're canning it, most people add a thickener to it so that the pie filling is just ready to go and they can just dump it in their pie crust. I don't like doing that because I don't like using all of the different thickening agents that are available out there. My preference is actually to make my pie filling just using a heavy syrup. So I'm going to add some sugar to this and a little bit of water, heat everything through, and just can it that way. And then I add my thickener, which is an organic cornstarch, when I'm actually going to make my pie. And it's super easy. It takes a couple minutes. I just throw a jar on the stove, add a little bit of cornstarch to it when it's thick, which takes less than a minute. When it gets hot, I just dump it in my pie filling and use it that way. Lots of people use cornstarch or arrowroot powder, some other type of thickening agent before they can it, and then they can it that way. But I just do it this way because there is no safe tested canning method for doing it the other way. You can use a product called Sure Gel to thicken your product, but I don't love the ingredients of that. So I just choose to do it this way, and it's super easy. So we are going to add a little bit of lemon juice to this as well. A tablespoon and a bit. We are going for a heavier syrup because this is a pie filling here. So I am going to add 3 cups-ish or so. I have about 6 cups of cherries here, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of water to this and then heat it up, and it's as simple as that. So you want to add enough liquid to this, so I just like to cover the cherries with the water so that when you open up the jar and you add your cornstarch, there's something there for the cornstarch to thicken. So make sure that you have enough liquid in there. So I'm going to go heat this up on the stove. And now comes the least fun part of this entire project, and that is getting all of these apples peeled here. Fortunately, I have this handy dandy little peeler core, which works really well. And we put it on there, and it peels and cores our apple and slices it as well. So did I mention this already, that I'm going to be making juice? I think I did. I got distracted by this not working. So this is my steam juicer. So we're going to put all of our peels and our cores, any of the apples that aren't in great shape. I am going to cut them though into smaller bits so we can get the juice out. There's a few things about the steam juicer that I will mention. One is I find that the juice out of a steam juicer compared to, say, a Champion juicer is a little bit watered down in flavor. It's a bit diluted by the steam itself. It also alters the flavor a little bit because it's heating the whatever fruit or vegetable or whatever it is you're juicing in it. It's heating it. So you get more of that pasteurized juice flavor than a raw juice flavor. So that's just something to keep in mind. But it is super easy to operate. So there's water in the bottom. The juice collects. Let's unclip that. The juice collects down in this vessel below. And then you put your fruit in the strainer on the top. Something to keep in mind if you have little kids with this is that the hot juice does go down into this pipe, and if they fiddled with this or grabbed it or pulled it or anything like that, that could be really catastrophic. So just something to consider if you have little kids and you want to do a juicer like this. This makes a little accordion, little apple accordion here. So to do my pie filling, I need to get a cutting board here, but I just cut these in half. So I have, wow, I'm not having very good luck today. Little pieces like this for my pie filling. So I am going to get a bowl filling up right now with some cold water and a little bit of lemon juice so that my apple slices don't oxidize. You want your jam to be at a rolling boil, as you can see here, for around 4 minutes or so. Once it hits this point, set your timer for 4 minutes, and that should give you enough time to hit the gel state that you want to hit to with jam. Do keep an eye on it though, so that it doesn't boil over. With my luck today, that's exactly what would happen. So we've got that going, and then this we're just gonna get to the point of really hot, probably just at a simmer. and then we're going to jar these cherries up. We're at 38 seconds left on our timer, so I'm actually just gonna shut my timer off, shut my heat off. I'm using my steam canner today. This is a steam canner. I've talked about these at length. If you want more information about them in a little bit more detail, grab that guide and that'll fill you in on all the deets about this. Whenever you're making jam, you're going to find that your jam will get foam on it, as you can see here. So what we're gonna do here is skim off our foam. So we got 3 beautiful jars of raspberry jam, and we're going to wash our rim really well so we get all that sticky jam off of there, because that can affect our seal. Really good wash. You can use a little bit of vinegar if you like. Clean up our sloppy mess. Wipe our counter off. So we have a few inches of water and a splash of vinegar in the bottom of our canner. I'm gonna turn that on. Next up we have our cherries. So we're gonna do the very same thing with our cherries. Oh, they smell so good. I love the smell of sour cherries. I'm gonna need a few more jars, I think. Don't want to lose a jar to a failed seal because we didn't wash. With a product like this, where there could be air bubbles, you do want to make sure that you get those air bubbles out. Something that I always talk about, and I always will, when it comes to canning, is to make sure everything is around the same temperature. It doesn't all have to be hot, 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 unless you're using a boiling product. Like that jam, for instance, was really, really hot, so you want to make sure that your jars are quite warm. But they don't have to be exactly the same temperature, just roughly, and that will help you maintain the integrity of your jars, not end up with cracking or any issues like that. Because even sometimes what can happen is it doesn't look like the jar is cracked when you add that hot ingredient into the cold. You might not even hear it, or a cold jar, you might not even hear anything, but then you go put it in your canner and it breaks open. So make sure everything is roughly the same temperature. I am going to add a little bit more liquid to these, because when I debubbled, I ended up with a little bit of extra headspace on the top. Perfectly filled the canner, so that's awesome. Each of these steam canners is a little bit different, so make sure that you read the manufacturer's instructions on the one that you buy. This one is a fruit saver. I've been using it forever. I keep saying I'm going to buy another one, and I haven't gotten around to doing it yet, but I really need to. So we're going to can these for, I think it's 20 minutes. Something to keep in mind if you are going to be putting 2 different products in a canner that have different processing times, and this is a good example of that. 15 minutes for the jam for my elevation and 30 minutes for the cherries for my elevation. Because the jam is not a product that I'm worried about that extra 15 minutes impacting the flavor, the texture, or anything like that, I'm comfortable with putting both of these in the same canner and just canning it for 30 minutes. Just make sure that if you do that, that you're canning for the processing time, for the longest processing time, to make sure that all your products that are in your canner are safe. So now I'm just going to wait till this comes up to temperature and set my timer. And in the meantime, I'm going to go over and deal with all of these apples, which is probably the most tedious part of this entire thing, but it's going to be definitely worth it when I have a bunch more jars to put on the pantry shelves. All right, friends, our jam is done, looking lovely. And our cherries as well. This pot is extremely full. I tried to cram every single last apple in there and managed to do it. So over here I have some light, well, I guess it's a medium syrup. So a couple cups of sugar to about 6 or 7 cups of water. Give or take, you can just flavor that to your own taste preferences. And then in here, I've actually just heated my apples up. I find that, I've done this a few different ways before, but I find that if I heat my apples up like this, I don't get as much shrinkage when I can them. So where did I put my spoon there? And then over here, I have some apple pie spice. So this is my own apple pie spice. And this recipe is in the cookbook under spice mixes or something like that at the beginning of it, if you have the Little Mountain Ranch Family Cookbook. So now, I think this is hot enough. So I'm going to take my apple pie spice and I'm going to add a bunch of it to here. Everybody has different ways that they like things. Some people don't like, say, allspice or nutmeg or something like that in their apple pie. So the nice thing about canning something like apple pie filling is you can adjust the amount of sugar you use and you can adjust the seasonings that you use in here. So my apple pie spice has kind of your normal spices in there, cinnamon, nutmeg, a little bit of allspice. Actually, I'll tell you the exact recipe. 1 second. 2 tablespoons of ground cinnamon, 1 tablespoon of ground nutmeg, a teaspoon of ginger, and a half a teaspoon of cloves. So if one of those seasonings you didn't like, you can adjust it. And that is what is so wonderful about making your own food from scratch at home, is you can adjust it according to what you like. So I've added, I don't know, a couple tablespoons worth or so of our seasoning into our syrup here, and I'm just heating it up. You can see a few cherries probably floating in here, and that's because I used the leftover syrup that I had from the cherries because I didn't want to waste it, and there was a few cherries floating in there to use as the base for making this syrup. So that is good. So now what we're going to do is grab some tongs over here, and I'm just going to scoop out my apple pieces, fill my jar. I was just wondering why my feet were hurting, and it's because I took my shoes off to go into the living room. Forgot to put them back on again. Good grief, I've only been in here for a couple of hours. Getting older is so fun. I am going to use, which utensil would be best? This one, to just kind of push these down a little bit. I really want to pack in my apple slices here. Pack in as many as I can. This is one you're definitely going to want to debubble because there's lots of space for air pockets in there. I'm going to can these for 25 minutes in my steam canner, so I'll be back with you when I'm all done and show you what I ended up with. Good morning. It is now the next morning and canning is all done. We ended up with 21 jars of canning. We did 4 of the applesauce, and, or sorry, that's not applesauce, apple juice, and apple pie filling, which turned out great. I thought I would show you how I actually use the apple pie filling. So I'm going to make some baked oatmeal for breakfast this morning, and I have some of the apple pie filling that we did last year. So all I'm going to do here is open up a jar. It smells so good, and try to get it out of the jar. It's one of the reasons why I like using wide mouth jars, because everything just slips out really easily. All right, so I have a scoop of cornstarch. I'm going to add a little bit of water. I'm turning on my heat on here, and I'm just going to add it right into my pot, and that will thicken everything up exactly the way it would be if I had done it in the jar. And this literally only takes a couple of minutes, so it's no big deal. A little slurry with the cornstarch and a little bit of water. Add that in and just let it thicken, and it only takes a couple minutes. And while that is thickening, we are going to put together our baked oatmeal. So we're going to use 6 cups or so of oats. This recipe is on page 16 of the Little Mountain Ranch cookbook, if you have it. And we're going to add a cup of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a pinch of salt, and then we'll mix this together. I'm going to add some maple syrup for our sweetening. You could use sugar, any kind of sugar. You could use honey. We're using maple syrup today. 4 cups of milk, and this milk is so fresh. It is still warm. Going to butter our pan. There is our thickened apple pie filling, so I'm going to put that right into the bottom of our baking dish. So this is already seasoned with all of the spices that we use, that we canned it with, and it also has the heavy syrup, so we don't need to add any sweetening or anything to that. Going to add a 1/4 cup of melted butter and 4 eggs that are also warm from the chicken coop this morning. So now we're just going to mix this all together. I find that baked oatmeal works best with old-fashioned oats, but I do it with quick oats sometimes too. Now just onto our pie filling here. Okay, now we're going to pop this in the oven to bake for around 45 minutes or so, or until it is cooked through and golden brown on top. All right, friends, look at this. Doesn't that look delicious? Like having dessert for breakfast. So good. Yum. That is going to be it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed hanging out in the kitchen with me, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. And don't forget about the giveaway. If you want to enter that, click the link below. Have an awesome day, everyone. Bye.